Now, there's a question that many people ask. They want to know how they can rekindle their joy and enthusiasm for spiritual practice. Because it's often the case when we're beginners on the spiritual journey that we start to feel some sense of well-being, peace and tranquility in our practice. But as the years go by, and the more we apply ourselves to our meditation or our yoga practice, then we often feel that we become stale and we kind of lose our enthusiasm for meditation. So today, it's the 31st of December, 2023, and as we approach the new year, then I'd like to share some of my thoughts on how you can rekindle your joy for Dharma practice. There are many reasons why, when we're beginners, we experience feelings of well-being and joy. And also why, as our practice progresses over the years, then we lose this enthusiasm. Many people will be familiar with this phenomena. When you first visit a new holiday destination, it's often the case that you have this feeling of elation and joy. The new scenery and surroundings, the beauty of nature inspires us. But it's 100% guaranteed, if you were to decide to move to that place, that new country, that after time you would become used to it and you would no longer experience this fresh and wonderful feeling that is inspired by the environment and the change of circumstances. And this is a natural human habit. We need this, in fact. We need this in order to navigate our world successfully. And so at first, when we come into a new situation, then the brain is very active in trying to map out the locations of everything that exists in the environment. But in order for us to be productive and efficient in our daily lives, then we need to make things simpler. And so the brain kind of categorizes things and then puts them aside, puts them on the shelf. And so it's inevitable that over time we lose that kind of initial feeling of joy and inspiration that we had. And it's the same with our Dharma practice. Now, it is the case if you've had some life-changing circumstances. For example, you fall ill, or you've had some trauma. This can be a trigger for you to see things with new and fresh eyes. Sometimes we feel that we don't directly engage with our environment, but because of some drastic situation in our lives that we overcome, we can again see things with fresh eyes. And it's a bit like that in our Dharma practice as well. Every time we sit down, we need to approach our practice with a kind of fresh feeling, but it's often the case that it is lacking and it diminishes over time. There's another reason why your practice can seem less significant as you progress through the years. There's another factor to take in consideration, and that is your goal or your motivation for practice. Now, often when we're beginners and we sit down in meditation or we do yoga intensely for the first time, we get sensations of bliss in the body, sensations of bliss and also general well-being. If we objectivize this, if we make it into our goal, then this is another way in which people's practice can go astray. It's a bit like the first time we take alcohol or smoke cannabis. It gives us a feeling of elation. We have this new sensation that we've never experienced before, and it produces feelings of bliss and joy in the body. The exciting feelings that we experience when we first tried drugs or alcohol often wears off, and eventually we have to take more of the same substance in order to feel that sense of elation. But it never really has that fresh and first-time experience that got us hooked on these substances in the first place. And for many then, over time, this can create a kind of depression, especially for people who become alcoholics. Then in the end, really, they're only taking these substances in order to feel normal. They no longer get this feeling of elation that happened. And this also happens in our meditation. If in our meditation we're merely oriented towards these experiences of bliss and well-being, then likewise, over time, that experience or feeling will wear off. It will become less significant, and it leads to a kind of depression. So you often find that people who have been on the spiritual path for a long time become very small-minded. They're very easily upset, and it's as if they only see negativity in everything they experience. And it's a real trap. It's called becoming jaded or becoming insensitive to the Dharma. Why it's called becoming insensitive to the Dharma is because the Dharma no longer has this ability to change your mind or improve your situation. So the question is, what is the proper way to proceed, and how do we avoid becoming jaded or becoming stale in our practice? How do we keep our joy and our enthusiasm? Well, this is associated with the three types of activity in any Dharma practice, and that is study, contemplation, and meditation. And this first level of study is associated with understanding the Dharma, understanding the spiritual path. In order to understand the spiritual path, then it's essential that at first we study it. We come to learn what it's all about. And one of the primary ways of generating this enthusiasm for our practice is to understand what the results are of practice. And so it all comes down to what are called the preliminaries. This is the way in which we prepare ourselves for our spiritual journey. And if we don't prepare ourselves, then more often than not, as we set out on this journey, things will go wrong. And we often make the mistake that we think we need diligence in our practice. This word diligence in English kind of implies that we're putting ourselves through hardship, undergoing suffering in order to achieve something. But really, the meaning of diligence in the Tibetan language is joyous effort. Now, this joy that is involved in the effort comes from understanding that by applying ourselves to this practice, there is 100% a beneficial outcome that is to be had. And not only that, there's final liberation and freedom from all suffering. One thing to understand is that this activity of study isn't just reserved to looking at old texts and scriptures. We can also study our own experience or study our own mind. And this is incredibly important to develop this confidence in the outcome or the eventual goal of liberation and meditation. But it isn't the case that we just have to believe what is taught in the scriptures in order to gain confidence in the path that we're on. It's also worthwhile to look at the life stories of past masters, not only the past masters from the ancient times, but also the masters of the modern era. They lead by their example. We can see through their practice that they've achieved a certain level of well-being and happiness. It seems as if these masters of meditation never experience any suffering. Like my own teacher, Lama Yeshe, then their hearts seem to be continually filled with joy. And it's through their practice that they have achieved this state of joy and well-being. As I said before, then objectivizing this and making it our ultimate goal can cause us to become stale in our practice. Actually, the bliss and joy you feel in meditation itself is not the goal. It is this mind that is open and experiences well-being because the mind is free of anger and desire and ignorance. So you can study the scriptures, you can look at the life stories of past masters. Also, you can study your own experience. Likewise, you can participate in communal spiritual activities and find inspiration from your peers. Remain happy, remain positive, don't fall into negativity. And this root of remaining positive is not to focus on your self-interests. This is the very foundation or cornerstone of Mahayana Buddhism, and that is to be always motivated to benefit others. There are many challenges in life, and many people become discouraged because it feels almost as if, however hard you work, you will never be able to alleviate the suffering of all the beings who are trapped in samsara. But to start off with, what you need to do is, you need to be aware of where you are, what your position is in the cosmos, and be realistic about what you can achieve. As it is taught in the Buddha Dharma, then the root of all suffering is clinging to self, and also clinging to the reality or the fixed nature of situations. What we have to understand is the universal constant is change. Nothing remains the same. And so, however much suffering you experience, then eventually that too will come to an end. And likewise, there's no point in clinging to temporary well-being and happiness, because that too is impermanent and will not last. And so, as we head into 2024, a new year, a time of rebirth, a time to have new hope, then never become despondent. Always remain positive and be kind to yourself. There's only so much you can achieve in the time you have. So as long as you are well motivated and remain positive, then in the end, everything will turn out right. Happy New Year, and see you next time.